Ice Bucket Challenge? You might have heard about it or even participated, but a lot of people don't actually know what ALS is. ALS stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a disease that your motor neurons degenerate so they can't send impulses to your muscle fibers, which makes them stop developing. So basically, it's a disease that eats your muscles and causes paralysis, and in the end, you basically suffocate to death. Amyotrophic literally means no muscle nourishment, so it's what it means. And then ALS can start in your upper body or your lower body, and it either works its way up or down. Lou Gehrig is the most famous person that's had it. He was a baseball player for the Yankees at the same time as Babe Ruth, and he was just about right up there with it. At one point, he was playing with a broken toe, thumb, and having back spasms. He just kind of kept playing, and this is how he earned his nickname Iron Horse. Later, they x-rayed his hand, and he had 17 broken or fractures in his hand that he continued to play with and healed by himself. When he turned 35, his stats started to fall, like, a lot, so they knew something was wrong, so they had him tested. And about a year later, in 1939, he was diagnosed with ALS, which it's actually, a lot of people know it as Lou Gehrig's disease. And on June 2nd, 1941, he passed away from ALS. And this is a picture of what happens to your muscles. This is a normal muscle, and this is a muscle with ALS, and you can just see it like degenerates. I have this picture on alsa.org, which is the National ALS organization. The symptoms you get are muscle weakness and like difficulty doing everyday things. You are clumsy, which a lot of people just kind of chalk it up to being clumsy. You have muscle cramps and twitches, so it's kind of like everyday symptoms, but they just worsen. And if you've ever seen a person with ALS, their hands, you can just kind of tell by that. Their hands just kind of like swallow in, because there's no muscle and no padding there anymore. ALS, there's no actual cure for it, but there's like medicine to slow the progression. No matter what, you're going to die from it. It's kind of like a death sentence. The only medicine that's approved by the Food and Drug Administration for ALS is Rilutech, which is the one that slows the progression. But there's other ones that help the symptoms so you can have a better life. And there's therapies and stuff that help. And there's like breathing therapy because you can't breathe. And physical therapy, occupational and speech. If you're trying to talk to your helper and they can't understand you, you're not going to get the right help. So speech therapy is a big thing. And your family is also involved in this a lot, so they can get therapy and stuff from it. And nutritional help is to help them feed you, because you can't feed yourself because you have no muscles. And eventually you might end up having to have a feeding tube if you choose to, which they can put your medicine and your food through. But some people choose not to do it, and this therapy just helps them know what to do. The reason why I chose ALS was because in 2008, my grandma was diagnosed with it, and in August of 2009, she passed away. They said she lived, I think they said up to like 10 years she lived with it, and nobody knew because she had no symptoms. And when she started getting the symptoms, it just went downhill. Watching her go through this disease was the worst thing ever. She was always such a strong and independent person, and you can see in these pictures, she's just gorgeous and can't tell she's sick. And then this was taken a couple months before she died, and you can just tell she's just not there. ALS is the nastiest disease you can ever get, and it's basically a disease that eats your muscles and causes paralysis. And Lou Gehrig is the person most famous for it. The symptoms are having a hard time holding your head up, slurring words, which basically symptoms that deal with your muscles. While there's actually no cure, there is medicine and therapy to slow your progression. ALS is a disease that is becoming a lot more common, and people need to be aware of what it is, because it's a terrible disease that nobody